Good evening, everyone. It is March 9th, 2018. I'm Eric. Here I am at shtfplan.com. This one comes out of The Organic Prepper by J.G. Martinez, or Martinez D. We never could have imagined or prepped for what actually happened in Venezuela. Can we prepare for everything? We can never have imagined or prepped for what happened in Venezuela. In this article, I wanted to analyze my preps and the nature of the apocalypse we have been forced to face. I don't know about you, but anything that kicks you out of your place, of your warm bed, your pets, kids, wife, and the rest of your family, for me, does not have another better word to describe it. My comfort bubble was destroyed. My work of an entire life was thrown out the window. My family insurance full coverage policy is gone with the wind, although with no medications to be had and doctors running away to Argentina and Colombia. It's not like it was very useful. And the few preps I had for 4 or 5 months are history now, of course. They worked pretty well, and we stretched it a little bit, but once the system collapsed, there is nothing else we can do but close the place and bug out to some other place where we can at least buy food. What happened was something entirely different from what we had prepped for. And I think that many people in the United States, and myself included, most people, the person who happens to stumble across this video, I think that there's no way we can prepare for what our day of reckoning is going to be. He says, what happened was something entirely different from what we had prepared for. He says, I guess what I mean is that within our means we prepared more or less adequately. But what really happened was something entirely different than what we had not prepared for. He goes on to talk about how he expected consequences of turmoil, unrest, riots, crime, and so on. We were able to hunker down for a while and able to defend ourselves silently and seriously without having to leave our haven. But the scarcity problem that arises forces you to go out and look. And there are many places in the United States that would experience this scarcity. He says the scarcity problems began around the 2013-14 time. He says that that's the last time he can remember being able to get large amounts of corn, wheat flour, arpillas, and so on. An economic collapse this long seemed like something that was entirely out of the question. It was entirely unpredictable. Well, I would beg to differ with that unpredictable, and because I think pretty much every country has had a collapse at one time or another, right? So it's not too far out of the realm of possibilities for it to happen again. As a matter of fact, our economy in the United States has collapsed numerous times. And each time the banks, or the Federal Reserve rather, enacted some mechanism that propped the system up. For example, Nixon, the Federal Reserve had Nixon remove the United States from the gold standard. And now what our currency is backed by, essentially, is the military. So, he says, we knew something disturbing was going to happen sooner or later. We could feel it in the atmosphere. And this is the feeling that many people in the United States feel now. I've felt it, I don't know, for at least 4 years, and this year I think I feel it the worst. I'm not sure why, but I've had this nagging, sick feeling in my stomach, and it's not flu or anything like that. And he said he would have expected a pandemic or a coup d'etat or something like that before this hungry, zombie-like scenario. And let me tell you, when people get hungry, they will become zombie-like. We don't need some sort of pandemic to induce a state of zombification. All we need to do is remove the food for a while. He goes on to talk about how they knew something disturbing was going to happen sooner or later. And of course, anyone who digs into this information, this kind of information, has that same thing. We know something is coming sooner or later, and we also know that we can feel it in the atmosphere. But he says nothing like this. He could have never guessed that it was going to be that bad. We never thought it would be impossible to find a battery or engine oil or gasoline. Geez, this was an oil-producing country. Or that kids were going to be endangered in the very door of their schools. Of course, we have this, our kids are endangered in our schools here in the United States because of some fucking political agenda to remove the firearms from the hands of the people here. And which means if they were successful at removing the firearms from the people here, the deaths in the collapse, and whatever kind of collapse it is, social, political, I guess they probably would go hand in hand, huh? Financial. So, the deaths would be a lot more brutal. As opposed to being shot, you would have to deal with, hatchet, machetes, knives, and so on. Lucille, like Lucille on The Walking Dead. Shit like that. You can't tell me that dying like that would be so much more brutal than simply being shot. Of course, we'll have compound bows and crossbows and shit like that still, if or when. A lot of people seem to think they're not going to be able to do that because of an insurgency. I would very much hope so, but who knows, right? He said, in the worst of our nightmares, we could have imagined that one of our rescued cats that we relocated with of our friends in a barrio was going to suffer a horrendous death. Please don't ask for details. In other words, they ate the cat. And you know, there's only one animal that I really don't see as food anymore, and that would be a dog. For some reason, I can't see a dog as food, but I can look at a cat, see it as food. I can look at a random bird, see it as food, snake, whatever, but not my dog. So he said they never could have imagined that the oil and electricity state company employees were going to be threatened with imprisonment for treason if they tried to quit their jobs or leave the country. But that is happening. When I found out about this, I felt a deep sensation of relief as never in my life because I had left. The only similar feeling I can think about was when my last son was born and the doctors told me he was just fine, like a champion, and no reason to worry about. Under the current situation, being accused of such terrible charges is a complete nightmare. But with the income from the online freelance work, we have been able to at least keep the home running without the teeny salary that once was more than enough for a good living. With it, our family would have been, or without it, our family would have been condemned to doom, no matter our preps. Quitting and leaving the country and my family behind was one of those choices that have been the hardest in our lives, but the most sound and the most assertive in the long run. So I guess, if you can afford to get the fuck out of here before it happens, of course, United States falls, a lot of countries are going to fall with it. So, be careful of what fucking country you go to. Just by avoiding the potential danger of being falsely, of course, accused of treason and getting in a messy problem, it's already a huge benefit. I've always given trust to female intuition. When my wife and I discussed about how bad things were going, and the decision for me to leave first, I knew it was her intuition speaking. We never imagined that cash was going to be another commodity, and that the prices were going to be much different. If you tried to pay with a debit card instead of cash, if you pay with a debit card, the price will be double than if paid in cash. This is not surprising. So, Okay. He said, in retrospect, what could we have done to prepare for the current situation? 5 years antibiotic supply for each family member. He says they include pets. With the assistance of the goodwill close doctors, this should be considered as an insurance policy, a non-transferable secret stash of medications for the worst scenario. Penicillin, that kind of thing, right? Diarrhea stopping meds, serum, needles and tubing, surgical gloves, breath cover masks, and a couple of reusable syringes that could be sterilized in a small backpack stove or a bonfire in the backyard. A solar power array with a small battery pack and just for lighting. A large buried diesel custom-made aluminum tank with a proper size generator. With a homemade silencer and adequate rigging to the wiring of the house for the largest systems like freezers and air conditioners. Oh fuck, man, if you have air conditioning still, you're doing pretty good. Specifically designed plastic diesel tanks would have been best, as they don't rust and they are cheap and strong, but the aluminum seemed a better idea because they make it the size you want. So, enclosing our garage before the steel rebar disappeared from the white market and the production was destined to the black and gray market. A sun-protected small herb garden in the roof of the small workshop in the back of the house with a piece with spices and medical plants. And of course, if you have excesses of production, you can trade. A chicken coop with a couple of hens. And this is the shit that he wished he'd never, or wish he would end up doing before the shit went down. So, he said a chicken coop and a couple hens. Of course, if you have excess, you have a bartering item. He thought of growing their own sugar cane to squeeze and grind out what we call here papillon. It's solidified sugar. Couple of cornrows, and not the fucking hybrid Monsanto shit either. Get good ones. Another SUV with a much taller ground clearance, large tires, diesel powered with no electronics, and a huge front fender. And that's something, that's one thing you really do need to think about as your vehicle. You need to put, I have a big ass F-150, and it's the crew cab with the extra long bed, and the bumper is still the both front and rear bumper. I also have a trailer hitch on it. When I first got the truck, I flipped somebody off for driving like an asshole. Well, and they felt it necessary to chase me down, and so I stopped, and they smashed right into the back of my truck. And, of course, they lost their car at that moment. It totally fucked up their front of their engine, the radiator, everything, all because they wanted to be hotheads. But the point is, having a steel vehicle with some, I don't know, aftermarket add-ons like a bumper guard and light guards and all that stuff. Maybe even something, a roll bar on the back. And if you can afford it, slap a diesel in it. It's not that hard to do. Anyway, I thought I'd share this with you because this is coming from somebody that's experiencing the worst right now, or dead anyway. And so anyway, I hope everyone has a great evening, and remember, kill the state and live free.